Hey there, this is Scott Nick with RaceDay.Watch. Some of you may be aware that us at RaceDay.Watch are kind of Assetto Corsa fans, and right now we're running an official RaceDay.Watch Assetto Corsa server, and usually we rotate the content for that once a week, and what we do is we pick a race or an upcoming race basically that's listed on RaceDay.Watch, and we try to emulate that event. So if it's Goodwood, we go and find, the Goodwood members meeting circuit, and then an appropriate car, and put that on the server, and people can hop on it at lap time. So it's kind of fun. But I thought I'd take a little bit of time to talk about what modern Assetto Corsa is. That is to say, it was released in 2014, but it's changed a lot, primarily because of third-party developers getting involved and putting out tooling and additional enhancements that really make it pretty amazing. So the first thing you're going to want to do if you want to play with Assetto Corsa, of course, is get the base game itself, right? So easiest way is, as you'd expect, just to go to Steam and search for Assetto Corsa Ultimate Edition. So you're going to want the Ultimate Edition because it contains all the DLC that the Kunos studio that made Assetto Corsa contains all the DLC they released. And the reason this is important is because if you want to use mod content like cars or whatever put out by third parties, then some of those cars can be based on content in the DLC or in the DLCs. And so if you don't have it, you won't be able to use the mod content. But anyway, given the price, it's well worth it. This currently through Steam is almost $40 USD. You can, of course, wait for a Steam sale and probably get it a lot cheaper, or there are third-party sites that supposedly you can get the game in some fashion really cheap. But I don't know much about those. I haven't used them. Ask in RaceDay.Watch Discords or the ESR Discord if you're interested in that. So that's how once you get the game, then it's simply a matter of updating it. You can use the game without doing so, and it'll work perfectly fine, but it'll look like it did when it was, basically put out. And so what you're going to want to do, though, to actually make it look as awesome as can be, is go and download this thing called the Custom Shaders patch. This was put out in 2018 by someone whose name I cannot pronounce, but it's pretty amazing. Basically, made a bunch of 3D shaders to update the graphics in the game. So search Custom Shaders patch Assetto Corsa. You'll find this patch on this page here, and you could download it from here and then do, basically these instructions to install it, which is like probably extract to a certain location on your file system. Well, here's the rub. You don't really have to do any of that. There's a much better way, and that is to use something called Content Manager, which is made by the same guy who made Custom Shaders patch, I believe. So search for this guy instead. Click on this page, and then there's a good description here of all this stuff, but basically scroll to the bottom and do the download. It'll download very fast. It's pretty small. You can buy an unlock code which will open up some additional features in Content Manager, though I can't necessarily tell you what those are. So anyway, I've downloaded Content Manager. Let's just go and extract the zip archive to here. And you get two files. One's the executable itself, one is a manifest.json. You got to keep these two together. I found that if you don't, and for example you just have Content Manager by itself, then it can act like it's broken and not want to run. So keep those two together, and then just put them wherever you want. I'm going to put them in my users folder, so I'm going to make a new folder, Content Manager, and paste those guys in there. So now I've got the executable and the manifest.json. Just double click the Content Manager executable. So the first time it launches, you're going to get this setup screen, and it's going to try to autofill a lot of the stuff, like where your Assetto Corsa installation sits, which is in this deeply embedded Steam path. Should pick up your Steam ID. If you're going to join a RaceDay.Watch event, or probably really any server online that's doing something official, like an ESR server, you're going to want to have your real name in here. So my example, I'll put down my real name. Let's see here. I'm going to install the 7-zip plugin for Content Manager. There are others you can install as well, but this one's probably the most important because a lot of mod content is distributed as 7-zip archives, and so this should make it install faster, I believe, and so on and so forth. So once you get those set up, just hit OK. And so now the actual UI loads, and maybe this is where people who try to use Content Manager are first like, I don't really like this. And I guess I can kind of understand that, because it's a bewildering array of little controls and these all kinds of selection options. But once you get used to it and know where things are, it's pretty quick and easy to use. One thing to note is this menu in the upper right. There's a hamburger menu here, and it's got this indicator now on it, and so it's got something to tell you. So in this case it's saying, okay, there's an update available, update. So just click update, and it'll take a second and install it, and there, now it's installed. So that was nice and simple. So to keep in mind that menu, we're going to come back to that. Next thing to be aware of, so the overall layout of things in Content Manager is you have these major sections up here in the upper right, drive, settings, content, all that. And then depending on what you've selected up here, of course, it changes what else is available. So you have this top level content. Then when you select something here, you get these elements here. So I'm going to select settings, and so now it's loaded the settings stuff. Settings is further subdivided, right? So we've got a Content Manager tab, effectively. These are tabs even though they don't look like them. And this is Content Manager specific settings, which you can, of course, then further look through the pages of here. There's an Assetto Corsa, which these settings, I believe, should correspond to what you'd find in-game. And then you have custom shaders patch settings. So this is the key part why I say don't bother downloading custom shaders patch yourself and extracting and install it. Just install Content Manager, which is really just launching the executable. And then once you do that, you're going to have an option in here. I already have it installed, evidently, so it's not prompting me, but I'm going to delete the patch. I think this is probably what you'll see when you first launch Content Manager. So I'm going to hit install and say, yep, they're missing. Okay, install. And now it's installed. It's that simple, right? So I didn't have to download and extract anything and all that kind of stuff. So the recommended version is set right now. You can change that. I'd probably leave it on recommended, the latest recommended. You should be good to go. Probably nothing else to do so much in this section of settings. One thing I do like to do is go to Content Manager settings and change the appearance. You can increase the UI scale. So I'm going to increase it, maybe because I'm getting old, to 150%. And so now everything's bigger. This is particularly useful when I'm on my rig and have that really wide, ultra wide monitor. This makes things a lot easier to see and use. So that covers that. Next thing for settings to look at, of course, are video settings, right? Go in and tweak these under Assetto Corsa settings. Go in and tweak these how you want. I have a pretty high NPC, so I usually, max everything out and so on and so forth. But, do it as you see fit. The next most important thing are controls. And so it's retained some of the ones from when I was previously messing with this. But essentially when you come in here, what you're going to do, and this should be familiar to anybody who's used a racing sim of any stripe or a recent one, Race Room has control sets, and you go in there and can tweak your settings. Similar here, so under Assetto Corsa settings controls, you're going to go in here and just map your various controller settings. So in this case, I'm going to hit this button here. I'm going to reach over. My rig's a little farther away. And so now you can see I've mapped the steering wheel, and as I move it, there's an indicator in the middle showing, basically that it's mapped. And I can do the same thing for throttle. Again, I've got to reach over. And so now I've mapped the throttle, and you can do that for everything, for brakes, and so on and so forth. So you can see those are mapped. That is just the axis section of controls. There's also a buttons one, and so for example, I want to map my paddle shifters on my rim. Click that, and there, it's mapped. And I can do that for previous gear and everything, right? And so system has settings, patch, all these things you can tweak and play with. I don't need to explain them in laborious detail to a lot of people, but if you do have questions, hop on the RaceDay.watch Discord or the ESR Discord, who's our sister community, the sim racing community. So that covers the basics of setting up your controls. Now, a key thing to be aware of that's very useful. So in my case, I have a McLaren GT3 rim for my Fanatec setup. I also have the Podium rim, and then of course I have things like an H pattern and stuff like that. What you can do that's very cool is you can create a preset. So once you've gone through and mapped everything like you want, I could go off and say, okay, I'm going to make this preset, and I'm going to call it McLaren GT3 rim, right? Save that, and so now I've got this preset named McLaren GT3 rim. That's really cool. Well, if I've also gone off and switched out the rim for the Podium rim, and maybe I want to set it up with the H pattern, I can go through and set all those controls, and then hit save preset, and I can do Podium rim. In this case, of course, I haven't really changed anything, but you get the idea. So the cool thing now is if you swap out a rim, you can quickly change to the setup that's appropriate. Normally I have several, right? I have a Podium rim one, which is Podium rim with paddle shifters. I also have one for, of course, a McLaren GT3 rim, but for the Podium rim, I have one Podium rim H pattern, or Podium rim. I had one other, I forget what it was at the moment, but that's really cool for switching around back and forth between the things. One other word of warning, at least that happens for me with, I don't know if it's Fanatec specific or if it's Content Manager and everybody will encounter it, but when you first launch Content Manager, and if you just try to hop in and drive right away, you may find that your steering wheel and your buttons aren't really bound, and you'll have to exit the session and hop into settings and do them again. And by do them again, I mean, really, if you've saved presets, all you have to do, even if it's already selected, is just select it again, and then you can test, move your wheel, right, and you should see it doing that. And you can test your throttle pedals real quick, and everything should be good to go. But I found that to be the case, so you get in the habit of, first time you launch Content Manager, just go off and select the preset, even if it's already selected. Select the one you want before you launch into any content. So, key tip. That pretty much covers the settings you probably immediately care about. There are a lot. You can look through them, tweak them as you want, but that should get you going. So the next thing to talk about is actually getting in and driving, right? So in this case, we're going to click the drive option at the very top, changes the overall screen. You get all these sections here. Single is basically an offline mode, right? So you can choose, like if you just want to practice on a circuit, hit practice. You can change the circuit you're looking at. So let's go to Mosport, which is a mod content I downloaded previously. And here's the Barth. I don't want to drive that little guy. I want to drive, and you can search, of course. You can be, they're all BMWs, but you get the idea. Here's the M4 GT3, also mod content, I believe. So then you could just go off, you hit go, and bam, you're going to be launched into that track and car combo. For the purposes of like getting to the race.watch server or maybe an ESR server, you would go to the online section. And what will happen is it'll start loading in every server that's been registered with the official Kunos server. And the number of servers is kind of staggering. Right now it's telling me there's almost 6,000 servers, and now it's going through and collecting more detailed information on each. To find the race.watch server, you're just going to go up here to this little search bar, type in race.watch. Alright, it's not showing yet. It may just not have populated. Sometimes you got to give it a little while to load. Let's see, let's try it again. Okay, now I see what I did wrong. So I had left the filter on that said missing. So basically, previously it was filtering out servers where I had missing content, so I couldn't join them. So I just had to flip that option off. I guess that's set by default. So anyway, searching race.watch, making sure that's off. Now I can see the server, right? So if you click on it, what you're going to get is this description over here on the right about the content. It's going off and it's saying, I can't find this track, I can't find this car or that car. Here's the beauty of a set of Content Manager and why you want it, right? It makes working with mod content trivial. And so in this case, I could hit this install missing content button. I found that Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. So I don't tend to use that. What I do instead is the description of at least our server has download links. So just click on, for example, let's get the Ferrari 488, right? So it's hosted on Drive right now. So here it is. I'm going to hit download, and of course Drive takes a second. And while it's doing that, I'll hop over and do the Lamborghini as well. I'll hit download. This one's too large. I'll say yes, download anyway. So now it's downloading both of these here, right? And then, let me see, can I see the link? Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to install those two cars now, just to show you. This is how easy it is, right? Go to your downloads, where I just downloaded them to. All you have to do, here's the 488, drag and drop it onto Content Manager, right? And you're going to see this pop up, and it's basically saying that go to this menu, and here it is. Here's the Ferrari ready to go. Hit install. It just automatically extracts the 7-zip archive for you. It can be anything. It handles RAR files. It handles straight zips. It handles, it does everything. You can do the same for the Lamborghini. Drag and drop, right? And get the same thing. This hamburger menu up here becomes active, and you hit install. Pretty simple. So now I have both cars ready to go. The only thing I need is the track, right? It says track is missing. Now if I scroll down a little more, you can see there's a download link here for Sachsenring, right? So I'm going to hit the download link. This actually is on Race Department. In this case, you have to be logged into Race Department to download it. So I'm going to log in. And give me 1 second. Just going to look up my password. This is the exciting part of the video. And Race Department. Talk amongst yourselves, please. There we go. Alright, so alright, so I logged in, and so it's immediately downloading Sachsenring, right? So go to downloads, just give that a second to download. And so basically, I should also mention that when you do the drag and drops, you may find that depending on where you dropped it on Content Manager, it may not quite register right. Occasionally, you may have if you're on a, settings page or something, some of the drop targets don't work. So you probably get into the habit of, like me, when you go to drag and drop it kind of somewhere up here, like towards, the title bar, and you'll pretty much always get it to go. So let's see, we're almost done downloading. Race Department does not offer the fastest download speeds, but alright, so there we go. So now I got Sachsenring again, so you can see it's a zip file. I'm going to drag it and drop it. Hamburger menu becomes active. Hit install. And there it is. It's installed. So now if we go back to Drive, click on the server, I have all the content. It's no longer complaining, right? So at this point, literally I can load up. Hit join to join the server. Drive will actually just, I believe, load this car and track combo in offline, so you can test it out off the server. So you'd want to click join. Of course, you can select the car you want to drive on the server. There's two options right now. You cannot choose the livery. The server will assign it to you. I think effectively, in this case, it's going to assign the whatever one it thinks is available. When you actually do a race event, depending on how the server's set up, it can be configured so you get a specific livery. So that can be done, but in terms of a practice server where anybody can join, it'll choose whatever's available for the livery. So in this case, I'm going to choose the Lamborghini. I'm going to hit join, and then basically it goes off. Content Manager launches Assetto Corsa for you, starts loading up the content. It may take a little bit because it has, a fair number of liveries for each of these cars. you'll never actually see, doing it this way, you'll never see the old school Assetto Corsa menus, which is kind of nice. They were a little clunky. The most you'll see of any of that stuff is when you're actually in the session, you get these kind of options. So setup options should be familiar to anybody who's done another sim. So, Race Room has these setup options, gearing, nothing you can do on this car. You can mess with tire pressures, fuel, all that stuff, and if you have it set up right, just like in Race Room, you can go off and save a setup. So in this case, I might say, all right, Sachsenring Lambo, right? Type it in here, hit save, and now you got your setup. If you come back in later, you can select the setup, hit load, and it loads it up. Nice and simple. Anyway, you can go through and get that set up like you want, and then to actually drive, you hit the steering wheel, and now you're in the car. I'm not going to drive. It looks like the sky is not rendering correctly. It's interesting. I'm going to not drive because I'm not on my rig, but I wanted you to get an idea. Hit escape, go back to pits or whatever. You can exit out. So that's the basics of how you get things installed so you can do like the Race Data Watch server. I think I've covered most everything I need to. If you have questions, again, hit us up in the Race Data Watch Discord. There's some Assetto Corsa guys over on the ESR Discord as well, if you're on there. And feel free to ask questions. Otherwise, thanks, guys.